to begin today, what I really wanted to do was share something of a very personal nature with you. Prayer is the single most powerful tool that any of us can use to ascend. It is what Yeshua would have taught. It is what Mary Magdalene would have practiced. And all of the women around Yeshua would have practiced very intensive hours a day spent in prayer, in praying. So I'm going to begin with a small prayer, and then I'm going to get into the different levels of prayer that take us to the point of liberation, of ascension. Lady, enlighten what is dark, strengthen what is weak, mend what is broken, bind what is bruised, heal what is sick, and revive whatever love and peace has died in me. Amen. So in honor of Mary Magdalene, today we're going to discuss the 7 stages of intimate prayer. The light of prayer always exposes the darkness. The darkness cannot put out the light, but the light can put out the darkness. And this is the power of prayer. So there are 2 ways of praying. The first is known as ascetical prayer, and the other is known as mystical prayer. And the difference between them is that the first way relies entirely upon your daily committed praying, whereas the second way is initiated, inspired, and developed by the divine. It's mercy in action. Anyone who's using the power of prayer as an ascension tool should know that they should always be receptive whilst praying. This allows for prayer's profound influence to be received in the crucible of your conscious mind and heart. Now, these 2 immaculate ideals, of course, of ascetical prayer and mystical prayer, they meet. They meet in many places because there's many stages to praying. So the first stage would be to tame the body, the mind, and the senses. And Yeshua and Mary Magdalene practiced this, and they taught this in the desert. What they would do is they would take groups of people out into the desert, sometimes for a week, sometimes for 2 weeks, sometimes for a month. And they would fast, and they would pray intensively, and they would sing, they would drum, they would dance. They would cathartically release the shackles that have held the soul bound to suffering. So taming the body, the mind, and the senses, what is the purpose of it? The purpose of it is to accommodate an illuminative, purificatory process, a rite, a ritual. And this is the aim of mystical prayer. The Lord and Our Lady, they're eager to drench the seekers, the seeking heart, with healing powers. And they always provide us with a perfect climate for our ascension. They know better than us what is needed at every given moment, and they are always creating a climate to help us attain our goal of reuniting with them. So prayer should always be experiential, and it must be infused with love. Otherwise, it may not bridge the consciousness towards the intimate reunion that we're looking for. So prayer, the purpose of prayer, of course, is to bring us to the feet of the divine, to offer us a vision of the divine, to allow us entrance into the kingdom of God. So the bridge between illuminative prayer and purgation happens within the dark night of the soul. And within the dark night of the soul, we face and we purge and we purify our senses, our memory, our intellect. And we do this, we want to cleanse ourselves of all past associations with matter and with the pleasures of this world. And this is why fasting from this world was so powerful. This is why Yeshua and Mary Magdalene taught this to their followers in the desert. They would do this very intensively, often only drinking water for many days and nights. And of course, what happens when you fast, the senses start to go crazy, the mind starts to go crazy, and this is because there is a sickness in us. It could be physical sickness or it can be spiritual sickness. And fasting from this world and fasting the senses from its interaction with this world is how we assess what is actually there inside of us in the most private, confidential places. Now, prayer reaches into these private places where we are often distraught and lonely and suffering and struggling. We don't show that to people. We hide it behind our smiles, behind our titles, our awards, our successes. Everything that we do, we try to hide what's really there inside of us. But prayer reaches in and cleanses us in these deepest, darkest places of the self. So prayer is extremely important and extremely powerful. How you pray is, of course, going to be individual to you according to your religion. Some people pray using prayers that have been written in history by saints. Others may use mantra, holy name, repeating the holy name. And we see this in all religions. We see this in the Buddhists, they chant in a rosary, the Muslims chant on rosary, the Hindus chant on rosary. So repetition of holy name is, for me, the most powerful and essential driving force of connecting us, of helping yoga to happen. And then within the crucible of the heart, transformation begins to happen because of the power of holy name, because of the purity of holy name, because the Lord's name is always holy. Within each level of prayer, each stage takes time. And for some people, this could take many years, each stage. You could be in one stage even for an entire lifetime. Or you could pass through all 7 stages in one day, in one moment of sitting down and approaching prayer in a humble way. Even though every level of prayer is intimately connected according to your ability to devote your time, your effort, and energy into a daily practice, it is also relevant how much sukriti you have. Sukriti is a Sanskrit term, and it means it's a spiritual bank account that is accumulated over many lifetimes. And when this bank account becomes sufficiently filled because of your charitable works, because of your praying, because of your faithfulness, this sukriti starts to build in your spirit essence. And when it is sufficiently filled, you will be predisposed to realize every degree of prayer with great intensity and very quickly. Sometimes, like I said, it's possible to experience all 7 stages in one sadhana experience, beginning with the spoken prayer. First we have to speak the prayer, then we go through the purgation period where the cobwebs of our consciousness are cleared away. And only once we engage in this kind of prayer can meditation begin. And meditation, it allows for the soul to reach to a higher, more transformative type of prayer. Love and receptivity become the rewards of this kind of praying. So, even though a divine vision may be quite rare for most of us, it is actually perfectly achievable for anybody who petitions the divine in an unbreakable way. I say unbreakable because it's like pouring honey out of a jar into a container. When you pour honey, it's a steady stream, it doesn't break. It's a flow. And this is how prayer has to be. We want to see their kingdom. This is the goal of praying. We should never, ever underestimate the power of prayer and holy name, because it has the ability to reveal the kingdom to us. And that is unsurpassed. There's nothing in this world that can reveal the kingdom to us as quickly as prayer. It's very intimate. So the 7 stages are: the first stage is spoken prayer, or the recitation or repetition of mantra, holy name. The second stage is purgation. Purgation means to cleanse away the unwanted things in the consciousness and in the heart. The third way is to engage the mind in meditation, so that whilst you're praying, your mind is fixed on the goal of life, on the kingdom, on the Lord, and on Our Lady. This leads us into the next stage, which is transformative prayer. And then prayer becomes infused with devotion, which is the next level. And after that, prayer becomes receptive. We start experiencing things. We start seeing things. And then in the final stage of praying, ecstasy is received within the crucible of the heart, and we are given a divine vision. A vision of God and Goddess, a vision of the kingdom, a vision of saints who are going to bless us and help us on our way. So I'm going to just break down these 7 stages for you to make it pretty easy, so that you yourself can engage in this type of prayer. Prayer is the vine that helps the consciousness to climb out from lower nature into the higher nature and beyond, to actually reach the kingdom and have vision of it. So in stage 1, we realize that in order to facilitate and carry and contain the feelings associated with devotion, we have to vocalize our prayer. So speaking prayer with the mechanism of the voice, pleading to the divine for divine mercy. This is very potent, and it is recommended for any beginner. It is the first stage of praying. To be embodied as a human being, we have to understand that the soul and the body, they're melding together to facilitate our transformation. Our bodies, including our voices, are best utilized in time spent praying. And it's the one thing that we don't do the most of. How much time do people spend in prayer in a day? Very little. But within the practice of spoken prayer or recitation of holy name, there's 2 components that are needed in order to move to the next stage. One is to be aware of who you are addressing. Who are you talking to when you're praying? To focus your mind and to focus your voice on reaching, tending to have an experience, an interaction with the divine. The second action that needs to happen in stage 1 is to be committed to your daily practice. Without fail, I will spend 5 minutes a day praying, or I will spend 1 hour a day praying. I will spend 2 hours a day praying. And that once you decide for yourself how much time you are willing to dedicate to this, to then be committed to that practice every day without fail. These are the 2 elements by which your climate of consciousness cannot rise to the next level without these 2 things. We may find that our senses have a little bit of a fit. They're trying to recapture you so that you stay within a paradigm that you're familiar with and that everyone around you is familiar with. So your desires may suddenly become inflamed. But don't be alarmed. When you start praying like this, just see these desires that are coming up. Just see them as dirty laundry from your past coming up to try to throw some kind of distraction in your path. throw your consciousness into the washing machine of prayer and watch your temptations and hankerings dissipate. Stage 2, in the purgation period, it's a period of cleansing, and the dark night of the soul is encountered and experienced here within the purgation period. And there are 3 dark nights to be experienced in prayer. The first dark night is the dark night of the senses. The second dark night is the dark night of the mind. And the third dark night is the dark night of the soul. So within the first climate, which is the dark night of the senses, we find ourselves untangling ourselves from illusory pleasures that have caused us to suffer. So we withdraw the senses from the objects that are causing us to suffer. So for example, if somebody is an alcoholic, the alcohol which they are indulging in and enjoying is causing them to suffer. They don't want to give it up. They can't give it up because of the addiction. They're addicted to whatever very, very small pleasure they're actually getting out of it, because they haven't understood yet where real pleasure comes from. As I did so, I saw a complete shedding of my skin. The person that I was when I was younger is not the person that I am today. And it is only due to prayer. I did not go to psychologists, psychiatrists, to counselors. I definitely was a very troubled human being back then. And I was addicted to all kinds of pleasures. You can't even imagine. I mean, I was in the rock business, in the music industry. I was exposed to every kind of pleasure that there is on the planet. And I gave them all up for God. And change is never easy, of course. And my senses, who were used to getting their way by any means, they didn't like the change. But they had never been disciplined before. They're like senses are like wild children who don't get disciplined by their parents. So, you know, since birth, we take what we want, we eat what we want, we watch what we want, we enjoy what we want, and we've become seekers of pleasure on every level of our being. So the purgation period of prayer becomes very essential to us in order for us to ascend, to withdraw, and to see where we are rooted to passions that have a hold over us. So vocal prayer becomes our greatest friend, because it cleanses the heart of the mind and the senses of all the dirt that's been collected there for many lifetimes. The hard knot of ego is about to be dissolved. It illuminates in miraculous ways all things that are hidden beneath the surface. So the soul purges, as the soul purges its attachments to the things of this world, as it does so, the ability to keep on praying may become difficult. You may find it difficult to sit still, that the praying can actually have a purpose and a goal. The soul hasn't yet reached the higher stages of prayer, where spiritual pleasure becomes the fodder that makes you want to pray, because you're still in the process of cleansing the heart. So at this point, this is where your dedication, your committedness to your praying becomes manifest. It's extremely essential to push through during that cleansing phase. So as the rock of holy name, as the rock of prayer drops deep into the pond of our consciousness, our kismet is another word for karma or samskar. These are our defects that have come back to haunt us from our past. Eye for an eye, every one of our deeds comes back to haunt us. And they still exist in us. We carry these kismets, these karmas in our energetic body, and they're all waiting to come to the surface for cleansing and for healing. to challenge us and to make us face what is actually there inside of us. Now, at this stage, baptism or initiation is incomparably essential. It is so impactful to go and seek out a holy master or a saint, a sadhu, who can help us to transcend and get through this very difficult stage. We become ready to receive the holy wisdom in the form of a holy teacher.
Blessings to you.
And they allow for the soul to move upward into the higher climates that are only found in the next stages of prayer. So during this process, you may find that your urges and your itches of the senses may become quite intense. The senses, as they pry themselves away from the objects of their pleasure, become desperate. So we can really see where we're addicted and bound to our suffering. I say that we are addicted and bound to our own suffering. Suffering is not something that is happening to us, it's something that we are creating. So at this stage, it can become spiritually dangerous. The rocks of distraction are going to come up faster and more furious than ever before, trying to get your attention. So during this process, you may find yourself regressing. So in order not to regress, there are 5 things that need to happen. 1 is to seek out spiritual association. That means seeking out friendships or inspiration from and with people who are more elevated than you. The second thing is to fix yourself daily to your prayer no matter what, which we already discussed. The third thing is to eat a peaceful, non-violent diet. We cannot transcend and realize the kingdom or have a vision of our creators as long as we are indulging in the eating of flesh or drinking of blood. The fourth thing is to be determined that no matter what, I will pray, I will get a vision of the kingdom. I want to see God and Goddess with these divine eyes that I have, and I am determined to see that. And that is the purpose of your prayer. And the fifth thing will be to be silent. While you're praying, that you don't allow distractions. Cover your head, you light your candle, and you close your eyes to this world, and you go very deep into prayer. These are the 5 climates that will help you to become strong and will help you to fight for your life, for your freedom. Freedom from what? You're freeing yourself from these habits that are causing you to suffer. So the dust and the dirt that was in the bottom of the pond of your consciousness has now risen up to the surface of your mirror to reflect back to you so that you can cleanse it and wash away in the power of prayer what's coming up for you. So this process can take many lifetimes, or in others it can take a day. And that depends on the 2 things. So the first thing is the Sukriti, which we discussed, which in Sanskrit means your spiritual bank account, which accumulates over many lifetimes. So your Sukriti is sufficiently filled, then the Lord and Our Lady will facilitate a purificatory process that will inspire you forward in the form of a holy teacher.